You can now subscribe and save 20% every single time with the Strava Craft Coffee subscription. That's right. You can get that delicious CBD-infused coffee sent straight to your door every 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8 weeks. Get 20% off every single time and never have to worry about running out of coffee, needing to run to the store in a panic. You're just getting great coffee sent to your door. It's CBD infused. It can help you with aches and pains, and it's also rich and tasty. So just scope out Strava Craft Coffee today and consider subscribing. But if you don't want to subscribe, you just want to try it out for the first time, you can use the code DNVR20 to save 20% off your first order. And of course, you could always come down to the DNVR bar and try the Strava Craft Coffee CBD infused cold brew that we have on tap. But give Strava Craft Coffee a try.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. 2 goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
And welcome in to the DNVR Broncos podcast on a great day. It's just a great day. After a great day yesterday. Before I talk about the presenting sponsor of the show, I want to give a shout out to Mace for his Bucs becoming Super Bowl champions. What a night that must have been, Mace.
It's a victory Monday. That's all I can say. The biggest victory of all. And man, it was sweet. Even though sometimes I had to say, okay, yeah, you're cheering for Tom Brady.
No.
Got a touchdown. I soothed myself with the fact that arguably the MVP of that game was Colorado State's own Highlands Ranch resident, number 58, Shaquille Barrett, who was there to capitalize off the Chiefs being weak at tackle, capitalize off something you've talked about, RK, the Chiefs' unwillingness to adapt to what they were missing, and just made Eric Fisher his own personal hand, or Mike Remmers, sorry, I think Eric Fisher, because he should have been playing that game, his own personal hand puppet for the entire time, and held the Chiefs to their worst offensive performance in the Patrick Mahomes era. So on a personal level, cheering for Shaq Barrett, so happy that Mike Evans, Levante David, Donovan Smith, Cameron Brate, those other longtime Bucs that had been through all the suffering are tasting the ultimate success. It's wild. And so it changes the template of what teams might do to try to get themselves over the hump, because the Bucs made the bold, audacious move, a move that I wasn't necessarily down with, to have a 43-year-old quarterback try to guide them, and it worked. So now it's been done. What do you do?
Nothing bold and audacious about getting Tom Brady on your team.
One second.
No one has ever won at 43 as a starting quarterback like he has.
Okay. Before we get into all of this, a shout out to our presenting sponsor, MSU Denver. MSU Denver Online, where you can use the code DNVR Sports and get your application fee completely waived. Free application fee, a $0 application fee. It's pretty awesome. Pretty sweet deal that they have set it up over there. MSU Denver puts a dynamic education at your fingertips without forcing you to decide between earning your degree and living your life. And yeah, that's right. MSU Denver students work twice as many hours as students attending any other Colorado institution. So check them out, msudenver.edu/online.
My boys, what's up?
There we go.
Yes, like we've said, and DTL chiming in, what a beautiful day in Denver, Colorado, and in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think so. Everyone was dreading the game, right? It was this terrible thing of having to root for Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes. Now, we were all steadfast in the belief that this was a very easy decision. You root for Tom Brady all the way. And I think everyone who made that decision, the correct decision, was handsomely rewarded. Like I couldn't have enjoyed that anymore, unless, of course, the Broncos were playing in the game. It was just fantastic to watch. It was like a borderline religious experience. I think my soul just floated above my body watching that for a second. It was that was incredible.
Some may call that the TB12 method.
Well, no. Let me ask you guys: do you remember when the Bucs beat the Raiders and how that felt?
Yes, very similarly.
That's exactly. I mean, there's something about the Bucs against the AFC West, and the Raiders, if I recall correctly, they were favored in that game too, and their offense was rolling. And of course, the Bucs, John Lynch has famously said that they basically were in the huddle because John Gruden knew what Bill Callahan was going to do, and not quite the same advantage, but it looked like the Bucs knew exactly what the Chiefs were going to do. You got to shout out Todd Bowles for having a great game plan on the defensive side. I mean, with all respect to Brady and everybody else, to me, he's the real MVP of this game.
I mean, Todd Bowles, it really at both sides of the ball for Tampa Bay. They just absolutely beat the Chiefs. The players executed, but also the game plan was just there. Everything Tampa Bay did worked on offense and defense, and they weren't afraid on defense. Mason, I think that's a huge credit to Todd Bowles. You know, right off the gate, they on third down, the first third down of the game, Todd Bowles brings the heat, and Patrick Mahomes just an inch or two off because the pressure was there, and he wasn't afraid to bring pressure on Mahomes.
They got him seeing ghosts. That was another thing because you blitz a couple of times early, and then we would see as the game goes on, they show blitz and they drop back into coverage. So the Chiefs, even though they're only blocking 4 and the Bucs are getting pressure with 4, they got that duct tape and baling wire offensive line seeing ghosts and seeing shadows and not really knowing what they were going to do. And even the great Patrick Mahomes, if he doesn't have protection, is going to be vulnerable. And then because they rush 4, you've got enough guys in coverage, and those guys, and to their credit on the back end, they're plastering. You got 2 off-ball linebackers that are good in coverage, that are handling their end of it. Travis Kelce didn't have the space that he normally had. It all just kind of came together.
This was, to me, the entire game. Well, first of all, I thought it was really interesting. On the tailgate, Henry Chisholm told us that he was talking to Carl Durrell, who is a close friend or knows Todd Bowles really, really well. And he said Carl Durrell told him, you give Todd Bowles this much time to prepare for a game, and he's going to put together an incredible game plan. And to me, that set the framework for the entire story of this game. The story was Todd Bowles was willing to adapt to what the Chiefs were doing, and Andy Reid wasn't willing to adapt anything, period, at all. And so you look at this game, the lowest blitz rate ever by a Todd Bowles defense. So he knew that you can't blitz Mahomes. And also, the most 2-deep safeties he's ever used in a game as well. And so it shows you he didn't look and say, we're going to make the Chiefs adjust to what we do. No, he said, we're going to adjust what we do to what the Chiefs do. He took away everything deep. Patrick Mahomes on deep passes, 0 for 5, 0 yards, and a pick. Absolutely erased what the Chiefs wanted to do by changing their game plan. And meanwhile, Andy Reid, who was just completely and utterly outclassed in this game, just had no backup plan. None at all. And it blows my mind that they came into a game without both of their tackles and had one of the lowest one of the lowest help rates in next-gen stats tracking history. Talk about being stubborn. They said Patrick Mahomes will make magic and we'll be fine.
We know how that works, right? When you get stubborn and you don't chip and you don't help a tackle that is in obvious need of help. That's how the Broncos lost a game during their Super Bowl run. And it's almost like Kansas City had so little experience with real adversity in terms of falling deeply behind against a really good team with an elite quarterback that they froze. I mean, what was interesting about this is one of the things we talked about over the course of the season with the Chiefs is that they were taking what the defense gave them at times. And if they were taking away downfield targets, they were happy to hand the ball to Clyde Edwards-Helaire and turn him loose. And there were games when they did, and that worked for them. Edwards-Helaire had 9 carries last night, averaged 7.1 yards per attempt. Why you're not taking advantage of the fact that you've shown in the past that you trust him, and then you went away from that. The screen game was non-existent. I mean, it was almost, it was almost like Kansas City just was a deer in headlights. They froze in the wake of this attack. They didn't adapt, and it's baffling considering that they have adapted. But the Super Bowl, it's a different stage, even though they're experienced on it. It's a different stage, and it was too big for them last night.
Well, I believe it was the first play of the second half that Kansas City ran the ball with Edwards-Helaire and got 7 or 10 or something like that. And it worked perfectly. And I'm saying, okay, well, I mean, they're not down that much. They can run the ball in this game to come back. And then they just went away from it. And that was mind baffling. And guys, I have to wonder if everything that went on with Andy Reid's son on Thursday and Friday night had a big impact on this and really just messed with Andy Reid. Because like you guys have said, this was not the Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs offense that we were used to. And we did see it last year in the big game where they were able to be very good and win a Super Bowl with that. So, I mean, that and guys, this really reminded me of the 2013 Broncos, where the Broncos had so many things, so many injuries build up, so many things go wrong with them, especially in the postseason as things kept going, and it just all crumbled in the Super Bowl. That's what it really felt like. The Chiefs suffered some injuries throughout the playoffs. It kept suffering injuries. Then all these little things kept adding up the past 2 weeks, and then it all crumbled. And a similar fashion, too. Broncos got blown out in the Super Bowl. Chiefs get blown out in the Super Bowl, both two great offenses.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, and maybe the stuff with Andy Reid's son did play a role. To me, the biggest thing was that the Chiefs rely, all their little trickery, all their games that they play is all based off having the defense on their heels. And so when they get you thinking, when they get you, reacting to what's happening rather than just playing, that's when they catch you with the screen or the misdirection or this, that, the other thing. And they just never, not once in the entire game, had the Buccaneers on their heels. In fact, the Buccaneers were going forward towards them the entire game. So I thought that was a big reason why you didn't see them pull out the screen stuff, because they didn't have the Bucs guessing at any point. In fact, the Bucs were just saying, here you go. We're not going to let you beat us deep. And they just refused to adapt. And I wonder, they had, Andy Reid has to lose sleep over this. Why did you draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire? If when he's averaging 7.1 yards per carry in the biggest game and you can't do anything else, you're not willing to keep giving him the ball. I see people saying things like, well, you can't ask Travis Kelce to block. If you're trying to win the game, you can. You have to.
It's not like he can't.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce, he's not Julius Thomas. The dude can block. He can be a pretty good blocker. And like Zach alluded to that first possession of the third quarter. They come out, Edwards-Helaire for 26, and then a quick pass to Kelce for 8, and then Edwards-Helaire off right tackle for another 10 yards. They've got the Bucs on their heels, but then they get 3 yards on a first down run, and all of a sudden second, it's like, oh my gosh, we're 2nd and 7. We can't run the ball here. Why not?
Yeah.
It's easy for us kind of sitting there from a distance to sit there and kind of second guess the play calling, but it was just sometimes I thought to myself during the game, I think they've lost their damn minds with what they're doing out there.
At especially that opening drive of the third quarter, to me, it was a perfect time to put some pressure on the Bucs. The Bucs, after the beginning of the game, just never had pressure on them at any point. And I kept thinking, oh, man, all right, if the Chiefs get one here, then the Bucs might, pucker up a little bit and make a mistake or just go 3 and out. And then the defense starts to think, oh, God, here they come. Here comes the wave, because we know that the Chiefs can score in bunches. And just at no point did I ever see them put together a drive where it was like their goal was just, hey, let's just get in the end zone any way we possibly can. They really were stuck in their own ways. And yeah, going back to it, You can't ask Kelsey to block. You can't ask Mahomes to hand the ball off. You can't go quick game. It's like, if you want to win the Super Bowl, you can do those things, and you should have been prepared to do that when you knew that you had no tackles.
Yeah, and that was so clear throughout the game. Guys, Mahomes running backward was just crazy to see time and time and time again. We know that Mahomes can do that successfully, but he was legitimately running backwards. I mean, he can drift backwards and then make things happen, but he was running for his life behind the line of scrimmage. That was absolutely wild to just see time and time and time again.
And I think, and I'm not sure, Mace, maybe you know if the Bucs talked about this. They had a really good rush plan in the sense of not never, but almost never saw Mahomes actually break the edge. I think the entire plan was, hey, when you get him back there and he starts scrambling, just take away the outside.
Just keep running with him.
Right, yeah. Run with him, but also have outside leverage when you're running with him so he can't bend around you. Because that's, when he starts getting back towards the line of scrimmage is when he gets really, really dangerous. Hats off to Todd Bowles and Shaq Barrett and JPP and Vita Vea and Devin White and Levante David. Across the board, all the secondary who had their lunch money stolen from them by Tyreek Hill the first time around got the last laugh. It was just, especially from a Broncos perspective, when you see a great defense like that, just turn it up to 11 in the biggest game. It brings you great memories.
Yeah, keep him in the pocket, and then if he gets outside, like you said, make sure he can't turn upfield. There were moments when he gets outside, but you've got the defender that is stalking him, but is between Patrick Mahomes and the line of scrimmage, and thus you have to think of the words of Tom McMahon: the greatest defender in NFL history is the sideline. And all of a sudden you've got him boxed in because you've got the defender that's going to be in front of him, and you have the sideline on the outside, and you've effectively closed him off. You're basically you're playing a little bit of trigonometry out there with how you're taking advantage of things. Todd Bowles was he was on a higher level than anybody with the Chiefs last night. Bigger picture, not really for this conversation. You wonder if there aren't a couple of teams that have already hired their head coaches who wake up this morning regretting not waiting and trying to get Todd Bowles.
Yeah, and some teams waking up saying, "Oh, it's good we passed on Eric Bieniemy."
He becomes You're the Houston Texans, and you have David Culley, who has been an assistant head coach with the Ravens, and that's well and good. But here you have a guy with head coaching experience, coach of record for the only season of the last 10 for the Jets that saw him win double-digit games, and he just crafted one of the great game plans in the history of the Super Bowl. And oh, by the way, a lot of his training in terms of learning about the game goes back to the great Joe Gibbs, under whom he played back in the 80s and early 90s with Washington. The resume screams that this guy should do really well in his next head coaching stop. Frankly, guys, I think even though he's not going to get a job this cycle, I think Todd Bowles is at the top of the list for the next cycle, and not far behind him is the offensive coordinator for the Bucs, Byron Leftwich.
I was going to say, enough talk about the defense, guys. Byron Leftwich last night showed that he should be in those conversations with Eric Bieniemy every single year for every single reason. Look what Byron Leftwich has done. Tom Brady comes in and historically, it starts the season off almost the worst that any quarterback has ever been, throwing the deep ball. Then it clicks and it starts turning around, and look what this offense was. And guys, the offense put up 31 points. The defense was phenomenal, holding Patrick Mahomes to 9 points, but the offense also did their job as well. You score 31 points, you should absolutely win. Brady was efficient, only threw for 200 yards, but hey, they were running the ball. They weren't afraid to turn to Leonard Fournette and have him run 20 yards into the end zone, or have him get the dirty yard or two that they needed. And then they weren't afraid to throw deep, but also Tom Brady was efficient as well. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 125 passer rating. That offense, this was just a great team performance. It was no wonder why it was a blowout.
Yeah, they looked so comfortable, and that has to be an extension of Tom Brady. And I do owe Tom Brady an apology because I called him washed, and he definitely was not washed.
Everyone
you know,
but Zach
could have thought?
Everyone but Zach owes him an apology on this podcast because I was skeptical, even with the weapons that he was going to be blessed with in Tampa Bay. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, Cameron Brate, OJ Howard for a little bit earlier this season. Brady found the fountain of youth. Ponce de Leon many centuries ago went looking for the fountain of youth in Florida. Tom Brady found it with the TB12 method. I've said a lot of bad things about the TB12 method. I may have to rethink some of that stuff because look at him in his 40s and he looks like a man 15 years younger and looks like he's going to have another great season next year. I mean, if you're the Bucs now, do you start thinking about what life could be like if they extend Tom Brady?
Yep, which is just so wild. I mean, Tom Brady up to this week was saying he wants to play until he's at least 45, which makes next year the last year of his contract. He's 44. So, I mean, do you talk extension this offseason? If I'm the Bucs, I'm doing that in a heartbeat. I don't need to see Tom Brady and what he's like last year because Mace, this team with an average quarterback could be a playoff team. I mean, Jameis had the highs and the lows, and they weren't a playoff team. But you get an average quarterback in there. This team is good enough where they're probably a playoff team. But that's probably where I'm drawing the line. Tom Brady brings them to a Super Bowl. So Tom Brady doesn't need to be throwing 43 touchdowns for the Bucs in order for them to get to this point. Just having him. So I still think he can regress, and this team's going to be very good. But Mace, my girlfriend and I were joking after the game last night that we need to start the TB12 method ASAP.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, shoot, it might have you young and spry into your 60s if you start it right now. I mean, I might be hopping on it later on, but maybe I have to rethink some things here. The other thing, I'm actually sort of rethinking in a bigger picture the NFC because we talked about how the quarterback pendulum is swinging toward the AFC, and certainly young quarterbacks it is. But if Brady can play another few years, Aaron Rodgers isn't going anywhere. Russell Wilson isn't going anywhere, although there was a report that said that teams have inquired about Russell Wilson's availability with the Seahawks. And for Seattle's sake, hopefully they're smart enough to say, no, we're not doing that. So the NFC, it might be older quarterbacks, but it looks like they're still pretty stacked at the top of the conference right now, even though I know what Zach thinks of Aaron Rodgers. I mean,
well, you know what I think of Tom Brady, so I'm not going to disagree with that.
Is this not steaming towards a Rodgers-Brady rematch next January in the NFC Championship?
Give Brady every single time, 100 out of 100 times.
All right, let's pivot here quickly and just change the conversation to a Broncos scope. Obviously, you're not going to catch the Chiefs with no tackles every time, and you'll be lucky if you ever get that once. But is there something that Vic Fangio and the Broncos, and really just the entire NFL, but from a Broncos scope, can take away from last night and say, there's something there that we can replicate?
You have to have the quarterback, and I'm going to start with the offensive side of the ball. You can beat great quarterbacks with a great defense occasionally, but they had Tom Brady, and we can't lose sight of that. So it starts there. But what's interesting is, guys, we talk about the Broncos potentially getting a quarterback like Deshaun Watson and having to trade, multiple first-round picks and Bradley Chubb. You're going to need Bradley Chubb in order to do what the Bucs did last night. So, but for me, that's why, no, Bradley Chubb, if you don't have him, you still have to have the quarterback first. But that Bradley Chubb is a big piece in being able to do that.
Yeah, you look at it and you say, man, if the Broncos were able to have Shelby Harris, Jarrell Casey, Draymond Jones, Von Miller, and Bradley Chubb, like, they should be able to do that, right? Yeah. But at the same time, they've never been able to get that combination on the field. So there's part of you that says, oh man, if they ever get it, then watch out, KC. There's another part of you that says, man, do they need to go a different direction to figure out a way that they can actually get their entire group on the field? Or is the quarterback more important? And is a guy like Bradley Chubb more expendable because you need a quarterback, or less expendable because you need a pass rush? And that's why those are probably, arguably the two most important positions on the football field, quarterback and pass rusher.
Look at where the Bucs found their pass rush. I mean, now Shaq Barrett is going to get paid handsomely this offseason, but the Bucs found that pass rush off the edge with Shaq Barrett, who was a backup who who looked like he had more if he started. But that was a projection. That was a roll of the dice by the Bucs when they brought in Shaq. And then Jason Pierre-Paul was thought to be over the hill and thought to be not as effective since the fireworks incident. And so basically they were building that edge rush with two dented cards, at least when the Bucs brought them in. Now, you get them in there and you find out, oh, they can still play. So it's a credit to their pro scouting for finding value in Shaq and Jason Pierre-Paul. Another thing that I think about with the Bucs is Lavonte David and Devin White are terrific linebackers. And one thing that gets me thinking here, as a Bucs fan, I would hate to lose Lavonte David. I mean, he's been there for 9 seasons. He was the team captain last night for the coin toss, not Tom Brady. I think that's something that everyone should note. I mean, as big as Brady is, Lavonte David is the guy that's been there through everything, and he is a
really quick though
team leader. What?
Really quick,
What?
it was Travis Kelce for the Chiefs, not Patrick Mahomes, too.
Well, Kelsey's been there longer, but I think while I just think it's important to note, it's not just Tom Brady's team. The Bucs don't want to lose Lavonte David. They don't want to lose Shaq Barrett, but they're going to have to make some tough choices here. And Lavonte David is going to be 31 this year, so they may not want to give him a big contract. Now he may want to take a discount and play with Tom Brady, and if that's the case, fine. But if he wants to get one more big strike, if I'm the Broncos in a better cap situation than most, looking for more from inside linebacker, and I want to start replicating what the Chiefs did, I think long and hard about importing Lavonte David.
That would be huge, especially if you can do it cost effective. And then we have Jake coming in here who's pounding the table for Micah Parsons. I mean, what if you combine those two and try to do exactly what the Bucs did? Devin White, bring in the young guy with the veteran experienced guy, Lavonte David. And then though with that, you would be going all in on defense and trying to honestly build another 2015 Broncos defense there. And that's just not sustainable. It would keep you competitive in pretty much every game though.
So, Vic is trying to win right now to kind of consolidate his position, save his job. And that's where the stuff with the Bears is interesting, because if they trade Nick Foles to get Carson Wentz and Mitchell Trubisky is gone, does Vic look at Trubisky, say, I had a great defense in 2018. I know you're shaking your heads. We're talking about 1 year. I'm just saying, if you're Vic, you went 12-4 with a great defense and Mitchell Trubisky as your quarterback. The classic pilot, not the plane, as you would say, RK. I'm not saying I want this. I'm saying Vic might think about it and try to pitch this.
Just so, George, will George buy it?
Who knows?
George was a part of a team that lost some big games to Mitchell Trubisky-led Bears team back when they had that equation. So
I just want to double down on the linebacker thing because I think the Broncos should have the front to be able to create pressure. Now, we haven't seen it as much as you would like against the Chiefs, but they should have the personnel. There's not much they can do there, in my opinion, to really upgrade, of course, except for keeping Shelby Harris, maybe potentially keeping Jarrell Casey if that's something they want to do. They should have the secondary to take away the deep stuff, and they haven't been beat too badly by deep stuff when they play the Chiefs. And then what happens when they play the Chiefs is Travis Kelce just absolutely eats up the middle of the field, and you get the drag routes and all that. Well, last night, Devin White and Lavonte David just absolutely took away that section of the field. So there was just nowhere for the Chiefs to turn. It wasn't there long. It wasn't there in the middle. Now they did have some of the short stuff behind the line of scrimmage, but they didn't want to stick with it. So to me, that is the biggest difference between what the Broncos have and the Bucs have. Is the Broncos do not have the guys who can take away the middle of the field the same way the Bucs did.
The cornerback situation is a little dicey too with the Broncos as well, and I think that's something that the Kansas City Chiefs would be able to expose even if the Broncos took away the middle. But so Ryan, when you talk about that, what are you talking about? Replacing Josie Jewell with?
Yeah, I mean, they both need replacing, in my opinion. If the goal is beating the Chiefs, now you can have a good football team and not be quite good enough to beat the Chiefs, but I think that eventually you have to get to a point where you're winning the division by beating the Chiefs. Now, we all know that starts with the quarterback position. But watching that defense last night, it was just remarkable to see the way that they took away three levels of the field with their defense, and it's everything working together with the pass rush, the linebackers, and the secondary. But I mean, like I don't have it in front of me, but the speed ratings on Madden between Levante David and Devin White and Josie Jewell and Alexander Johnson has to be just gigantic. So the Broncos need way more speed at that position, in my opinion, to be able to contain the middle of the field the way that the Bucs did.
Okay, so let's maybe kind of think in terms of reasonable solutions here, because if Justin Simmons, if you bring him back, then that limits what you can spend. And maybe this is going to mean saying goodbye to Von Miller and rolling with Chubb and Malik Reed as your edges. But if you could at least upgrade one of those linebacker spots, and you could bring in a Levante David if the Bucs don't re-sign him, and maybe you pair him with Alexander Johnson, maybe Justin Strnad, who is someone they really saw as a coverage linebacker, comes in when you go into your sub packages. And then at corner, I think you kind of box yourself into drafting one in round one, but you draft Surtain or Farley, whichever one of the two you like best, assuming both are available. And if one's gone, you take the other and you go on your merry way. If you do that, plus the right hedge, the hedge with upside that I would like to see, do you feel like that's an equation that could allow the Broncos to jumpstart this? Maybe not get into winning the division, but at least gets them closer to competitiveness and parity with the Chiefs. Maybe they steal a game. And if Drew Lock is the guy, great. And if the hedge with upside is the guy, great. But I think if you do that, you might be able to microwave this thing back.
I think this is more so a quick rebuild if you do this. This year, you focus on rebuilding the defense, go young. Moving on from Von Miller would be a huge part of that commitment, and going with the more unproven Malik Reed. But the young guy, you bring in, you keep Justin Simmons a young guy, and then next year, if Locke doesn't develop and the hedge is just an average hedge, then that's when you go get the quarterback. And then you feel like, okay, we have the young core on offense with the quarterback, whether it's a veteran next year that you go and get, but it's a big move there, or it's a young guy. And then you say, we have a defense that isn't over the hump. We have so many guys that are still young and up and coming. I could see this being a very realistic possibility, guys. But the thing is here is you're not doing anything big at cornerback or quarterback if this is the plan and this is how you approach it, which is fine. But it just probably means that I don't think you're taking a huge jump this year, but it could be microwaved very quick in a year.
Or Drew Lock takes a jump and you do take the jump, and they all do it together.
Or the short-term guy, if Drew Lock doesn't flourish, you plug a low mistake guy in, and that's we mentioned Trubisky. He's not a low mistake guy, but maybe someone like Tyrod Taylor, who has kind of babied a team to the playoffs before playing low mistake football. Maybe he steps in, and you have that offense that doesn't beat itself to complement with a defense that is carrying you, and all of a sudden you look up at the end of the year and you've got 10 wins. And if your defense is playing well and your offense is running the ball and not making mistakes, you actually have an equation that can work in January.
I also do have to take a little bit of credit for the Buccaneers win. Great job, Todd Bowles. Great job, Tom Brady. But I did put the DNVR bets jinx on them. I said if I bet enough money on the Chiefs to win, I can jinx them into losing. I went on DraftKings Sportsbook. I hammered the Chiefs in hopes of jinxing them, and it didn't work in the AFC Championship game. I just don't think there was enough funding behind the push. But this time it worked. So I'll take 20% of credit. I don't need a lot, but just 20%.
So essentially, you rigged this game. You bought the game.
Yes,
I don't think you did. I think this is. I think you basically paid the Chief. You paid a fee for the Chiefs to go away. It's like you are the Houston Texans and you paid the Browns a second-round pick to take Brock Osweiler off your hands.
You are the Arizona or the St. Louis Cardinals, and you got paid to take Nolan.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Yeah. Well, I actually.
Why did you go there?
Yeah, I didn't get paid, but we did have a ton of fun on DraftKings Sportsbook last night. I mean, the the different props they had were incredible. We had a ton of fun with it, so shout out to them. Last thing I want to say is just a quick update. We talked about Justin Strnad, and I think the Broncos might think he's like the secret weapon in all of this. That's a guy who's probably maybe today being spoken about more in the Broncos facility than anywhere else, where they're saying, man, if he can become even close to what those guys did, it's going to really help our defense. And an update on Justin Strnad. Obviously, he had the wrist surgery, and we saw him this weekend out there getting a lesson from the DNVR golf boys. So the wrist must be in good shape if he's playing golf, because I'll tell you, it's not an easy sport to play if your wrist hurts.
Yes, that is good news. But guys, I would caution just the expectations for Justin Strnad. I think this year, if he comes in and is a good coverage linebacker, that is a huge win. And I know the Broncos hope that can be the case, but don't rely on him as being that, Devin White, Levante David sort of player this year.
No, he's a sub-package guy. He's another piece. He's a chess piece you can move. You can use from time to time, and somebody that you're hoping at the end of the season is helping you as he accumulates experience, accumulates reps, gets better in coverage. And look, he's not somebody who's an every down linebacker at this point, but when you go sub-package, if you've got him and Levante David, and the thing with Strnad is the reason why the Broncos drafted him, and the thing that he did well, better than almost any linebacker in college football back in 2019, was he could cover downfield. And so that particular skill set is something that I think can help. I wouldn't expect the world of him, but I would expect him to help.
All right. I think that's going to wrap up the live side of things for today, but we're going to talk plenty more about this game and how the Broncos can improve and get closer to the level of those two teams on the podcast side of things, where we answer all of your questions. So if you want more, you can, of course, listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Of course, if you watched on YouTube, hit us with a like, subscribe, and you can even sign up for alerts to know anytime that we go live. But for now, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for everyone who tuned in, and we'll see you on the podcast side.